Hi, I'm Javad Shadzi, and this is Nate Stewart, and we're here to do a 034 Motorsport No BS fact check. This is the first one that we've really ever done like this. We do a lot of no BS fact checking on our live chat every week, but this is the first time in 20 years where we felt the need to really clarify something like this to this degree, this directly. And the reason we're doing this is because there's a company, Jackal Motorsport Tuning, that's offering a competing B8 product and has really spread a lot of misinformation, not only about our tuning, but their own. In many cases, they've made blatantly false claims about their product that technically are not true. They also have a large group of what we would call social media influencers, nut swingers, and trolls who work on substantiating these claims for them. In many cases, just gaslighting new customers who come into the market wondering what tune to run, making blatantly false statements, also contradicting themselves, making statements that aren't even true to their own things that they say and assert. Unfortunately, we live in a time where the internet is wide open, and Facebook and Discord, people can say whatever they want. And if they say it enough times, people start to believe it. That's a reality we have to face. We are a company that's really driven by technical excellence and the truth. We don't use lies, manipulation, trolling to compete. We don't use them as marketing tools or strategies. And so we can either go out there and troll too, we can spread lies too, we can throw mud like that as well, or we're kind of left with this option, which is very directly and blatantly saying and showing and demonstrating what's true, and also calling out the lies and showing the conflicting statements that are constantly being made. We don't take this lightly. This isn't nitpicking. We have a number of competitors out there, competitors like IE and APR and Unitronic. There's a lot of other companies that we wouldn't do this to. Do we take exception with some of the way these other companies do things? Sure. Do we take a different tuning perspective? Yes. But they have good products, and if customers decide to choose those, we're sad that we didn't get to work with that customer, but we don't have grave concerns for that customer's safety. And in this case, there are major concerns. We do feel a sense of responsibility to come out and say something, not only to defend ourselves, but as kind of our responsibility to this community and to, in many cases, our customers who have switched to this tuning. It's just important that people have access to the truth, because the truth is not out there. People are not talking about this. Some people are raising questions, but they haven't actually analyzed this file the way we have now. What we did is we purchased one of their tunes off their website. We read it out, which we can easily read out anyone's file. Anyone can read out our files too if they really want to. And we did a technical analysis of the tuning calibration, and then we flashed it onto several cars that we have here, and we did some on-the-road analysis as well. So what we'd like to present now is the summary of our findings. We have 26 slides. There's a lot of information here. It's going to take a while to get through it. If you really want to sit and watch this, which we hope you do, I'd recommend getting comfortable and grabbing a drink or something. We will try to make it as accessible as possible, but we don't want to shy away from the technicalities either. So we are going to get technical and dive deep. We may be discussing things that you're not familiar with, but we will always try to state it in layman's terms to make sure everyone who's watching can understand. But we want people to have access to the real gravity of what we're discussing. So that means we will dive deep too. Okay, so we're also, I just want to be transparent, we will be editing this. We don't normally edit our live chats, but we will edit it for brevity, for clarity. It's just a normal editing. It doesn't change the message or what I'm saying or anything like that. So we're going to jump into it. Okay, so how do we get here? We, after a good solid year of hearing these claims, seeing Matt Barrington and Tony Pinto post on Facebook and other groups and the Discord chats and things like that, things that we started to really question how truthful those statements could be given what we were seeing in the real world. After a lot of the attacks, especially by Jackal trolls, who are constantly reinforcing these messages that we know now are false and not truthful, we finally went to the Jackal website and we bought a file. We used an alias because we knew they wouldn't. They actually canceled one of our orders, and we had to place another one under a different name yet again. But we were able to finally get a Jackal account. So we did pay for the file. We didn't steal it or anything like that. And then we were able to read out the file. And first we did a bench kind of laptop analysis of the tune and calibration, comparing it to our tune and calibration so we could see what the differences were. And that quickly led Nate and the calibration team to see a lot of the major issues in their tune and calibration. So once we documented that, we put it on several of our in-house cars, and then we actually drove it and did back-to-back comparisons between the 034 Motorsport version of that file and the Jackal version. Again, this is a production Jackal file. It wasn't customized in any way. This is what they sell. We didn't give it to Matt to customize or tweak. We didn't go to him and say, hey, the car's doing all this stuff, can you fix it?
And it's compared exactly to our production file, same
off-the-shelf file
stuff. So.
That we don't do. I understand the Jackal, if you contact them, they'll make you your own file. We don't do that. Very, very rarely would we make a change for a customer. 99% of our customers run off-the-shelf production file because that's all we can maintain. We sell so many tunes. There's no way we could be juggling custom tuning all day, and we don't need to. Our production file is engineered optimally to take into account all the variables. So I would say that's a big red flag, and we've talked about this on the live chat before. That when someone says, "Hey, load the file up, drive it, let us know what you don't like about it, and we'll fix it," that's a huge red flag. Right? That's like going to a restaurant and they say, hey, when you get your burger, it's probably not going to be cooked very well, so bring it back to the kitchen so we can finish cooking it the way you want. That's not like a fine dining experience. And our goal is to give a solid production file that works for everybody, and that's what we do. So we did real world comparisons, and then we worked on creating this presentation, which we can start getting into, I think.
Yeah, and again, this isn't a complete analysis of the entire thing. This is just you could never get that through in a video format like this. This is some very broken down core fundamental findings that we're trying to show you.
Yeah, and to be fair, our focus is and has been on what did Jackal say and what's the truth. Yeah. And so typically we're going to show you kind of what they said or what they claimed, and then we're going to show all the evidence to fact check it. Obviously, we're presenting a myriad of things that they said that are not true, that were not truthful, that are not technically correct, or practically correct.
Yeah. And then there's some other, under the hood stuff that you're going to see, and we do everything with a comparison to how we've done it, or how, if we didn't make that change, why we didn't, kind of thing. Because there's a lot of stuff in there that doesn't really make sense, and we're going to have to go over that a little bit, and maybe they'll have a response as to why they did some of the things they did. But
we will publish this presentation online, so you can go through it with us, or you can review it at your own leisure whenever you'd like. Okay, so let's jump into it. Okay, so what we're going to do is go slide by slide. We will share this presentation as well for anyone who'd like to follow along in the presentation, or read it at their own leisure, or dissect it or evaluate it. We're putting this all out there for anyone to read and analyze, peer review it. We challenge other tuners or calibrators to corroborate what we say. If we're saying anything false, please let us know. But we will go claim by claim, just to kind of summarize, in buckets, the different claims that they've made that we believe are false, and then break down, why they're false. Yeah. So claim number one, Jackal has repeatedly stated that they do not disable ECU safety systems in any way. And the first one is the knock sensing system. And so Matt Barrington on January 27th of this year specifically stated that Jackal does not desensitize knock sensors. He also said in a different post, but anyways, to put the rumor mill to bed, Jackal does not desensitize knock sensors. I've seen this being thrown around as an attempt to discredit or make us look bad. It's just not true. Our track record of reliability and all the platforms we tune proves this. We tune 1,000 wheel horsepower cars, R6s, etc. He's stated this many other times, but we just clipped out one example. This statement is blatantly false. We did read out their ECU and we evaluated their knock sensing tuning strategy. On the second slide here, you can see that, and I'll let Nate dive into the details, that they've desensitized between 10 and 20% everywhere.
Yep.
The whole map is desensitized, not just in certain RPM or power bands that you would do when you're optimizing a tune, but they just did a hard 20% cut everywhere on their 93 octane file. So they literally desensitized it by 20% everywhere.
Yeah. And this table, again, this is going to be pretty information heavy here, but this table is basically a threshold of how much noise, what the voltage level is that's going to trigger what the ECU recognizes as a knock event. This is one of the tables. There's many. And increasing this 10 to 20% is going to require a 10 or 20% higher threshold of voltage for the ECU to instigate a knock event. So it's pretty clear that that's been done here and has been done across the board in light load, part throttle, cruise, full throttle, everywhere. There's no real reason that I've ever seen to do it in light or part throttle for these files, for these cars. So,
and which is like low speed ignition.
Yeah, you get into LSPI stuff. If you're mid load, low RPM, that kind of thing. It certainly is that region. But yeah, no, there's not really any reason to do it across the board. Yeah, and if you're looking at this table, the data in the middle is what the ECU is using as its one of its thresholds. The axis on the left is basically your airflow into each cylinder. The axis on the top is the engine RPM. So the axis on the left, as load increases, so torque increases, more airflow is getting through the motor. That's going to move you further down that map. The ECU is well over that 778 number. With any kind of tuned file. So you're basically, with this file, just pegging that bottom row and sitting there.
And then the other thing is they scale it differently between 93 and E40, and we couldn't see a reason for
I don't
that.
understand a reason. That generally, I mean, there's not enough difference in these burn characteristics of these files to deem a hugely different noise signature or knock threshold. Basically, what knock is reading voltages from the ECU. So I have no explanation as to why they would need a different threshold for E40 versus 93. It's the same motor.
So something that will invariably come up is, why is Jackal doing stuff like this? And we're going to go through a lot more stuff. And, inevitably, it's a good question. Why did they do it everywhere when there's no need to, or you shouldn't do it that way? We don't know for sure. We haven't talked to them.
Yeah, we don't know their technical involvement between the two of them. But all we can do is present what's being said publicly, which is what we have, in social media posts and whatnot, to what is the reality is in the files here.
Yeah, but I mean, this is not the right way to tune an ECU. No tuner out there would just say, just desensitize the entire knock sensing function. Across the entire power band and load map, and also do it differently between two different octanes. It just doesn't make any sense. So makes you wonder, do they not know how to do it the right way? And I think,
what effort was put into doing this?
Yeah, and we're going to continue to explore that throughout this presentation.
Ultimately, this kind of sensitivity adjustment across the board is just going to mean the ECU is less reactive to any kind of actual knock event, particularly in light load stuff that you might have. If you have a poor tank of fuel or a misperforming cylinder, spark plug issues, any number of things, it's going to take a much higher threshold. In all situations, you're just cruising the entire time. It's going to be a higher threshold of potentially actual knock until anything is triggered.
Yeah, I mean it's like putting in earplugs.
Yeah.
And expecting to hear everything that you're supposed to be hearing. It just makes it so the ECU just simply doesn't know as much about what kind of knocker detonation is going on.
A lot of the time through this, you're going to see us looking over here. That is going to be us taking a look at the slides, because this is so information dense. Yeah. We're kind of having to bounce back and forth between data, between this, everything you're reading along with the slides, we're looking at as well to make sure we're on the same page, literally.
So what we'd like to discuss now is what we believe is the right way to do it, which is also the 034 way. We believe other calibrators would use approximately the same method and techniques that we do. But the right way to do it, Nate, would be
Yeah, I mean, we don't really see any need to scale the entire knock system and desensitize the entire knock system. What we do see the need to do is increase the range and the operating range of that knock system. So we're making a bunch more power with this engine. Well, there's more load. We can push the load axis up to account for that, and of course, the motor is going to be generating more, mechanical noise that isn't knock with the additional load. So yeah, you on this calibration in particular, and on a number of factory calibrations, that means you may have to move the knock thresholds up to accommodate that higher load. It doesn't mean you're necessarily pushing it out of the range of where it should be. It just means that you're accounting for that additional engine noise, essentially from the added load.
Yeah, so it's not to say that we don't change knock sensor sensitivity. We do, and every tuner has to. The knock sensing profile of a tuned engine running more boost, making 100 more horsepower, is different than a stock engine. However, we optimize it to be what it should be, and you cannot do a 10 or 20% cut everywhere and optimize it. That's just not how it works, right? You can't ever optimize anything by treating the whole thing the same way. There's a lot of different variables when it comes to RPM and load, and so we optimize those in the different RPM and load regions, but we don't just cut it all the way back. And we're open about that. We admit, yes, we change knock sensors system sensitivity, but we don't just change it arbitrarily. We optimize it.
Yeah, we do it where it's needed typically. Yeah. Very few calibrations do we do it at all. In this case, it made sense, just the acoustic profile of the motor. It would false knock at higher loads no matter what octane or timing you had. So that's where we go in and make adjustments.
Yeah, when you make more power, you have higher cylinder pressure, so bigger booms, different kind of sound waves traveling through the block, and so you have to optimize those in most cases.
Yeah.
If you don't need to, then you wouldn't.
Yeah.
But to change it everywhere across the board is just simply more dangerous. So claim number 2 that has been stated many times is that Jackal does not alter the safety systems in the ECU in any way. On January 27th as well, Matt Barrington said, Jackal does not do anything to alter the safety of their tunes and keep safety systems in place. He also stated that Jackal is not in the business to blow up people's cars. We keep safeties in place. I've seen childish statements that we don't, and that just is not true. It's an excuse to slander because we are faster, having a safer track record. So again, that's just some misdirection on his part. I think speaking technically about the truth, revealing what they actually do to disable safety systems is not childish. Actually a responsible and critical thing that needs to be done in this case, because false information is being propagated rampantly here. In this slide, we'll discuss that Jackal invalidates the main driver safety maps, which could result in engine not responding to driver inputs, such as unintended acceleration. So, in the first example we have is related to the map info.
Yeah, so what this map you're looking at is basically, it's a mathematical safety check within the ECU that says your pedal's in this position. I'm going to expect this much airflow given that, all the parameters it's using to measure what's coming into and out of the motor. I'm going to make this much power with that. There's obviously some deviation, and the factory allows for that. This map is a threshold of how far off you can be from your mathematical targets. Mm-hmm. So how far away from what I expect can I be and still be totally fine with it and motor on happily. One of the big problems here, the way it was done on their file, is that at no throttle input, 0, you want no power, your foot's off the gas. This file says, hey, we can allow up to 1,000 Newton meters of deviation, which basically means the engine could potentially be wide open throttle, still doing its thing, because you're outside of some parameter that wasn't calibrated perfectly. You're in some weird edge case situation, and the ECU has no safety net now to catch that edge case. So it's just going to be full throttle with your foot off the gas. There's nothing you can do about it. There's no safety net, and that's what this map is for. It's a validity check, because no calibrator is ever going to get every edge case situation out there. As motors are changing, the environment's changing. So the OEM puts in these kind of safety nets to catch that and be like, hey, I'm going to allow some of this, but if it's too far out of range, we're pulling the plug. You're going to go into full limp mode, and you're going to be crawling around just to get the thing off the road. Because that's the safer route than your car just accelerating on with no input, which is the potential here.
Talk about disabling a safety system. They've completely turned this part of the ECU off.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the right way to do it.
Yeah, so as you can see, we also alter this map. It's a pretty common map. I would say that most tuners are altering. However, as you can see, the 0% pedal stuff, completely unchanged. You lift, if there's something out of whack, it's going to shut down everything just like it did in the stock manner. Mm-hmm. Increased load, yeah, we've got more deviation. We account for a way wider variety of hardware than the factory calibration as far as pulleys, intakes, exhausts. So we have to have more deviation for sure than the factory. But the off throttle stuff, that's where we keep it stock. There's no reason not to.
So to summarize, the ECU has an ability to see the variables, the inputs and outputs, and say, wow, this is wrong. This is outside of any normal use case. This should never happen. From the factory and with our tuning, the ECU has the ability to shut the power down, close the throttle, limit RPMs. What Jackal has done is disabled all that functionality, so the ECU can do anything and operate in any condition, even if it's implausible or outside of any use case, and that creates a real safety condition for the engine, for the driver, where full power acceleration could happen even if your foot's not on the throttle.
Okay. All right. So this next slide is in the very similar vein. These are all a series of maps that gives the ECU permission to, given a certain set of circumstances, enter a limp mode and how it can control that limp mode. These flags are here for development purposes within the OEM Calibrations toolkit to turn them on or off to test various functions and ensure that they've got their checks and balances.
Isolate variables.
Yeah, they can lock things down. Parts of the torque control paths are able to be turned off. What they did here is they went and turned them all off, so you just can't go into limp for a wide variety of situations. And I don't know why they would have done this.
Well, I mean, we don't know why. I think the obvious reason is they don't know how to do it the right way. If you don't have a key to a door and you need to get into a building, you can smash a hole through the wall. And in a lot of the cases, that's what we're seeing here is a real heavy-handed workaround approach to get the car to make power, to not have these safety systems get in the way of making more power. And if you can't figure out how to holistically calibrate the whole ECU so that the safety systems are happy, then you can just start turning them off to get what you need.
Yeah, you can burn a lot of development time getting things in order correctly to keep all of the systems happy, or you can short circuit it and just shut them off.
I mean, the way we do it, and the way factory does it, is a lot of work, and it's very difficult. You have to really know what you're doing, and I think like we've stated many times, on B8 tunes, we're the only tuner on the market that does it right at this point. With our Climax update, we are the only ones. And so everyone else is using these type of workarounds, but this is by far the worst approach we've seen from Jackal by just completely turning things off. So the proper way to do it, Nate?
You don't turn them off. There's no need to. You can let the ECU have control over these kind of limp modes. It's all protection systems that there's no reason to take them out of play. If you calibrate it correctly, they work fine.
Yeah. Other than the fact that if you turn them off, then they can never
be in your way. Yeah, no, right. They can certainly be out of your way forever, but that's not a safe or responsible thing to do when you don't need to.
The mobster approach to dealing with problems in the ECU is you just whack them.
just whack them out.
And they're gone. All right. So for the next claim, Jackal does not alter ECU safety systems. Specifically, torque safety system TCU limp mode disabled. So they disable a limp. Yeah, so the TCU to build.
This is another. So the TCU is reporting back to the ECU. Hey, I have a problem here. I need to go into limp mode. You need to cut all the power you can and just again safely navigate the vehicle off the road. That's what limp mode is for.
Yeah.
In this example, it's just set it 1,000 Newton meters. You can just send it.
Which will never happen.
Yeah,
these motors cannot make 1,000.
You'll never hit that threshold.
So same as the last slide we just discussed.
Yeah.
They just whacked it. They turned it off, got it out of the way. Now it can't impede their ability to make full power. And a lot of these things are interactions. If they just it may not be interacting in the obvious way. Could be a different map that was accessing the safety system, but by turning it off, they're able to kind of break through the wall and get in the building without a key.
Yeah. And again, this is all being highlighted due to the fact that there's multiple situations where they're stating that no safety systems have been disabled.
Right. Yeah. Let's not forget the initial claim. Matt Barrington on January 27th said he hasn't disabled any safety systems, so we're now on the third or fourth one.
Yeah.
So to summarize, Jackal removes ability for the TCU to command an EPC limp mode if deemed necessary by the ECU, increasing the risk of the transmission significantly if it gets hot or unhappy, like a failing mechatronic or something
of that nature. Yeah.
All right, next claim that Jackal does not alter ECU safety systems is related to boost pressure safety systems, and Jackal disables critical boost safety systems. If the engine overboosts, it cannot safely enter a limp mode, and it will continue to overboost and drive unsafely. For example, cats clogging is why these safeties should exist. And I think everyone in the B8, every B8 owner is worried about having clogged cats at some point.
Yeah, that's certainly one of the situations you can run into with this, where you've got a very clogged catalyst. You can get, even under part throttle, some really high manifold pressures, because you're just pumping it into basically a cork. So you want the ECU to just throw up its hands and be like, no, this isn't good. I need to shut down. Things are not operating properly here. And that doesn't appear to be possible with these kind of boost limits that they put in place, which is, 7 bar, 5 bar. Like, it's beyond what any map sensor on the ECU can read.
Yeah.
So you're never, ever going to hit them. So again, it's just shoved way out of the way and just forgotten about, essentially.
So you want to talk about, real quickly, the different maps? The map info?
Yeah, so one of them, the PQ SCHA, you see at the top, that's the pressure quotient across the supercharger. 7 bar, I guess, is a good idea to push that to. I don't know, again, why you would ever want to do that. It just disables any pressure differential there. There's the second one down is pressure up throttle. So that is the measured pressure before the supercharger. They have it set to 5.5 bar, and I have no idea why you would ever want to push that up out of the way, unless, that's there to catch, like, you've got a faulty sensor, a pre-throttle body sensor or something like that. That's there to catch things like that, because what situation would you be over, a little over atmospheric pressure there? Only if there's something wrong with the sensor, there's some other massive issue, with the rest of the motor. Again, there's no situation where it should be above that. And I don't know why you'd need to change that.
And they've got it set to what?
5.5 bar, roughly. Yeah, it's just railed.
You need like a compound turbo system to put that much pressure into the pre-throttle body.
It's just maxed out. And same with the intake manifold pressure. There's no cap on that. It's just maxed out. Mm-hmm. The way we do that is just simply move them as needed. So again, you don't need to change the pre-throttle pressure. There's no reason for that. Your maximum intake manifold pressure should probably be roughly what your maximum requested boost is.
Yeah.
You want maybe a little bit of wiggle room there, but it's again, there's a bunch of different setups, but just there's reasonable limits you can keep in place that aren't going to impact performance.
Yeah. So we once again we optimize these tables and these variables to keep the safety system intact, but accommodate the additional power and performance produced by the tune and the calibration.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next claim is that they do not alter ECU safety systems, is they disable fault monitoring systems. Jackal needlessly disables additional software to monitor safety for critical sensors that are required to be in good working order for the car to run safely.
Yeah. These sensors in particular, we listed a handful of areas where they disabled entirely any of the voltage range checking on your pressure sensors, literally all the pressure sensors on the motor. So I don't know why, again, this would be done. None of these are changed in ours at all, not a single one. So these are a wiring and sensor validation check that your wiring's good, you're not grounded or railed high on any of these systems. The sensors within its range, it should never physically be able to go below a voltage or above a certain voltage. And that's what these maps are for. For whatever reason, they're all zeroed out and pushed, well beyond what is physically possible for all of these sensors, right? I mean, atmospheric pressure sensor, I don't know why you'd ever have to push that out of the way. Pre-throttle, again, the pre-throttle pressure sensor, it's completely disabled. Both intake manifold pressure sensors are disabled. So literally every pressure sensor on the motor has its voltage range checking turned off. So I don't know why you would need to do that.
I'd say a good metaphor is, when you hear about people taking PCP and being able to like lift cars and having superhuman strength, the people aren't any stronger. It's just their brain isn't connected to the nervous system in the same way that says, hey, if you lift any harder, you're going to be tearing your muscles and ligaments. If you continue to lift harder, you may break your bones. Those safety systems get turned off when you're on PCP. So you can lift more, you can achieve superhuman feats of strength, but you do it at your own detriment, right? Because there's no safety in place. And I think we continue to see over and over again that they're able to create this level of performance by turning off the safety systems, and they've blatantly lied that they haven't done that. And it's just important that customers know.
Yeah, and that's the biggest issue is none of these things we're talking about are in the way of performance if you calibrate them correctly.
Correctly.
You don't need to touch a single one of these at all to maintain a fully performing setup.
But that's easier said than done.
So
yeah, doing this stuff correctly is not easy. So I don't know what claim we're on, but they're adding towards not altering ECU safety systems is related to EGT catalyst safety systems. Jackal disables the EGT protection maps for stock catalyst files by not allowing the ECU to actually lower EGT temps. It cannot add more fuel than the base map, meaning it will keep getting hotter. They raised the engagement temp from 950C to 1250C, and I think just about everyone agrees that anything over 1200 is very bad for your engine, including up to engine failure.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter, as the map can enrich regardless because it's been turned off.
Yeah.
They do not scale for added torque that the tune provides. Still only set for 300 torque. Yeah. So I mean, where this really can show up in the real world is on sustained pulls. If you don't have enough intercooling, if it's a hot day out, if the conditions are right, EGTs will go up. The calculated EGTs will go above 950. With a 034 file, the ECU is going to derate power. It's going to pull back the boost, shut the throttle, do whatever it takes, enrich in the fuel mixture, do whatever it takes to keep the engine safe. The sacrifice there is a loss of power to keep the motor from being damaged. On a Jackal file, the boost will stay the same. Yep. The fueling will remain lean, and there's no question that the engine will continue to make power. It'll drop off some because hot air is less dense than cold air, things like that. But for a lot of the people that say Jackal files are faster, this is why.
Yeah, and this comes into play much more on the lower octane fuels, the 91s, the 93s, where the EGTs are going to be higher due to the timing that you're allowed to run. And yeah, you want to keep those EGTs in check, and to do that, the first knob you've got on these ECUs is enriching that fuel mixture. And it's going to be less performant. It's not going to be quite as fast.
You're going to lose some power.
You're going to lose a little bit of power, but you're maintaining a reasonable exhaust gas temperature. So that's done. There's a number of ways the ECU does that. It has a range that it can do that. It can only go so low. Obviously, it can't flood the motor out, wash the rings down, that kind of thing. So there's a floor in there. We leave that floor on our 91 and 93 files where it is, a stock. So the ECU has quite a big lever to control that exhaust gas temperature. Whereas on Jackal's file, it is exactly the same lambda as what they run full load, as what is being their leanest request is, their richest request is exactly the same as their leanest allowed lambda that the ECU can give you.
Now, we could do it this way. We could disable the same ECU safety systems. We could push the motor to continue to make power when it shouldn't be, when it's verified unsafe. As you get above 950 to 1000 C, you can melt pistons, you can melt valves, you can start melting the cylinder head. I mean, there's a lot of bad things that can happen. It's just not worth it to make an extra 10, 15 horsepower. And so we do enrich, we pull back the power, until the conditions are safe, then the ECU will add the power back.
And there's quotes out there that oh, they monitor EGTs and whatnot. You don't catch every edge case. You cannot. You need to account for all of these other situations.
Yeah.
This 2-minute long pull in Africa or some other thing you've never been able to test for.
Well, not in Africa. Just could be anywhere in the US.
These days, anywhere. There are these edge cases that you cannot test for. You cannot capture every situation. So you if available, you want to have as many safety systems as you can in place, and this is a pretty big one.
Yeah, and not to say that we're constantly derating power, and we don't, unless the ECU safety system, which is still active, requests it.
Yeah.
All right. So next, we'd like to present some additional findings. These aren't necessarily fact checks of anything Matt or anyone from Jackal has said necessarily. Some of them we will provide when we've seen it, but just being in the file and looking. These are some of the kind of more obvious low-hanging fruit issues that we found that we'd like to present in more detail. Okay, so the first one is related to torque reporting. Jackal breaks the critical torque reporting maps within the ECU, meaning that the ECU does not accurately know or report the torque that the motor is actually making to the TCU, leading to significant drivability issues and clutch slip at full load during shifting. Now, we've been seeing this for a long time, and this is long time ago, one of the first Jackal pull videos we saw. It was like, wow, that's not right. Immediately we know that something's wrong in the tuning, and we know that it's related to torque reporting. Our Comparison X video from last week did a really discreet job of showing this on the same car, with our calibration and the Jackal calibration back to back on the same day, the same afternoon, the same spot in Mexico,
10 miles apart or whatever. It was as back to back as you can get.
Yeah. And so, if you want to go into details.
So this is probably one of the deeper, more technical, spots here. But this is the ECU's ability to take a driver request or how much torque am I going to make? How much torque am I being asked to make? How much airflow does that need to go through the motor to make that torque? So there's two maps. There's one that tells you I want to make this much torque, I need this much airflow. And then the other side is I have this much airflow, how much torque am I making with that? And those need to line up. The only way that all of the systems can jive is if those two line up correctly. The ECU, they do this because the ECU doesn't have enough computational power to do this real time and calculate it both ways. So this map needs to be a mathematical inverse of the other.
Yeah, and just to jump in real quick, this is like solving a formula one way and then doing it another way to check. It's just like you did
refactoring or however you want to think of it there. But you should have the exact same data coming and going both ways. Given one set, you should get the same answer. You could say a lookup. You could say a lookup table or a lookup. Like I have this coming in. That means I need this, or it's I want this. Give me that. It's the fundamental means of setting up the amount of airflow required for a given amount of torque. And everything kind of hinges around these maps being accurate to correctly control things from. It's not just the TCU. It's the traction control. ABS, your rear differential relies on this. Like there's a lot of systems that rely on these numbers meaning things that are accurate.
So what does Jackal do?
It is wildly off between them. It's
the two maps.
Yeah. So if you look at the higher load stuff, and it's hard to show this, but
it's all demonstrated.
There's some arrows kind of indicating what stock looks like and how they line up. And Jackal's is just completely off the reservation as far as lining up at all on the top end. And that is done because they're not correctly reporting, calculating, presenting the torque values from the ECU to any of the other systems in the car. There are limits within the ECU that you have to know how to get around to properly and mathematically do this. They don't know how to do that, so they're doing it this way instead.
Yeah. And it's not easy to do it the right way. It's not easy to get everything to work
together. Have to go in, you have to reverse engineer the thing. You cannot do it in the calibration. There's other stuff you got to do.
And one thing, we want to make sure everyone understands is we released our Stage 1 V8 tune about almost 10 years ago. Yeah. We've been working on it for 11, 12 years. It's nothing new. And so, the idea that Jackal could come out and within a few months and offer a better file than we've been working on for 8-9 years.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about it. That would be pretty magical if they were able to do that. Now,
They've got so much more going for them to do that with all of the information that wasn't available 10 years ago.
they could definitely be standing on higher shoulders than they are currently. But
Because I'll be blunt, this is how basically everyone else does it. You are limited within some mathematical reasons within the ECU that very few people have figured out, and this is the result. You end up with this set of incorrect information going back and forth, and it impacts shift quality, drivability, and all of the torque reporting that follows it.
and so, I want to be fair. Like 9 years ago, our file looked a lot more like this.
It did,
than it does now. Our file looks nothing like this now. For anyone who's like, you read out their file, are you going to steal their stuff? Listen, rest assured, there's nothing in here that we would want to steal or take. Not that we do that anyways. But, Jackal is kind of in the mid, 2015, 2016 era, B8 tuning.
From a technical standpoint.
From a technical standpoint, I think they've been more aggressive at disabling more safety systems than probably like APR was willing to back then, or we were. And that's typically a big challenge you have in tuning calibration, is managing the safety systems to allow you to make the power that you can make, but you still haven't figured out how to get those safety systems to play nicely. So instead of whacking them or killing them off, you limit the power and performance until you can engineer and solve around how to keep those safety systems intact. It's much easier just to throw them out the window. But we've never been willing to do that, and honestly, we've never seen another tuner in this industry be so egregious at turning off safety systems.
For off-the-shelf files like this, I can't think of anything that would come close. And then to say that no safety systems have been disabled, I'm sure there's some out there that would be like, yep, here's your Hail Mary file, send it at your own risk kind of stuff. There's plenty of those files that live on servers out there, but
that's fair.
If you tell people what they're getting, fine.
I think if Matt Barrington came out and said, hey, listen, we turn all the shit off so you can go fast.
Just go send it. It's your car, you can,
Yeah. Rock out with your socks out, but that's not what he's saying. We would have no presentation to give if that was the message.
Yep.
But that's not the case. So we just want to make sure everyone knows the truth. Okay, so torque reporting continued. This next slide, we want to talk through their false torque reporting. The ECU thinks it's making less air as RPMs climb. This is a workaround to get around uncapping the factory ECU torque limit. Scaling the torque lower allows Jackal to ride under the factory torque limit at the expense of drivability and safety.
Yep.
And this can all result in clutch slip, on shifts and high RPM throttle application, just like the video that we showed last week with the Competitor X.
Yeah, so the maps you're looking at here are basically, you can think of them as your volumetric efficiency maps. So for a given amount of pressure that comes into the motor, it's got a certain volumetric efficiency that's going to turn into a certain amount of torque. That's essentially what these slopes are going to do. It's a multiplier on that. So you reduce that, and then the ECU is like, well, I'm making less torque with this air. We're cool. We can ride under my torque limit that you can't go over, and we'll just keep asking for more air. So that's what is happening here, and you can see that in the logs. If you look at the log on the bottom of the graph there, or the bottom of the slide, you see that map value just kind of nose over, and that's in an attempt to try and stay under that torque limit that the ECU has in place that you can't get around in calibration only.
So Nate, what's the right way to do it that we do it?
We remove the cap in place. So there's we run into this a lot when we're trying to do calibrations, where you're so far beyond what the stock parameter set was designed for in that engine that the stock engineers had no reason to worry about that. It's at a number that's way outside their project scope. It's just something that they don't care what it's way off in the distance. That's not something they're ever realistically going to hit. In our case, these cars are making way more power than stock. You're getting into those uncharted territories, and you find these things which are either a mathematical limit, some hard-coded value. There's a number of things and limits that you can hit that you cannot fix in calibration. You have to go in and fix it in the firmware, in the actual software of the ECU that's running, to be able to unlock and give the ECU full control. We're not fudging anything. We're not numbing anything. We're fixing some mathematical errors within the ECU that cap it to some arbitrary number. And you have to go in and fix that. Otherwise, you can't properly distribute all the torque and calculate all the torque you need for all the systems. So we fixed that. All these tables end up looking very much like stock in the end. You have to do a lot less work to make the power. So our file probably has less changes than this to generate a more accurate result.
Which when you're calibrating the ECU the right way, then you don't have to fudge all this out,
Yeah.
this other stuff that doesn't need to be fudged.
Yeah, and you can make way simpler changes. Everything you're doing makes sense. Everything lines up. All your safety stuff, all your torque controls, all of it lines up. Your transmission's happy. It gets all the numbers it wants. That makes sense. So.
Well, and it's a little coincidental because there's a lot of lying going on in reality, but there's a lot of lying going on inside the ECU too. And when you program or calibrate the ECU this way, you have different parts of the ECU lying to itself. And you need, just like in real life, if you tell a lie, then you have to lie about all kinds of other stuff to make the lie seem true.
To tie it all up, yeah.
And that's what this calibration method is you lie in one spot and you have to lie in another, and then the lie just keeps propagating and it like never ends, And at some point, your engine blows up because of all the lies.
You're just wobbling around the truth.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting alignment with reality in this case. So, Naaman, does anyone else get this right, or are we the only ones who get the torque reporting correct?
I don't know right now, but I think we are the only ones that do it the right way.
Like the factory would.
Like the factory would, where you've got all of the proper torque reporting coming out.
I
haven't exhaustively tested everything out there.
But we see the telltale signs.
You see you see it, and you can Band-Aid around it. Now, a lot of guys will do custom files and whatnot to Band-Aid around it and make it work on a given car for that exact setup in those situations, but it almost never works all the time. You'll still notice some issues.
And how many days or weeks did it take us to figure out how to do this correctly?
Oh, a lot. I mean, we had to develop all of the data logging software to find the data, to figure out what caps were coming into place, where the issues were, trace back to where they were rooted from, figure out what those problems were, and
so
where
5-6 years.
I mean, that's the thing, is it's all incremental, right? So you're building up all your tools, and you end up with
this
the
isn't
tools
something we were
need.
able to do in a few.
This is not something anyone on a dyno, any custom tune on a dyno, can sit down in your car and figure out. This is a engineering effort that needs to be done to make these power levels at an accurate torque level or torque reporting.
Yeah, but not only did you and our team calibrate the ECU, you had to develop custom, never invented before tools to just simply be able to capture enough data to know even to what to change.
So we went in, wrote all of our logging tools to capture this, both on the ECU side, because it's not going to spit out the data you need normally, and the PC side to capture and realize that data. So yeah, we don't just turn the calibration knobs in WinOS or whatever your flavor of tuning software is. We wrote all of the software that goes behind the scenes to capture the data we need as well.
Yeah. So something like a Jackal is something really any calibrator could do with WinOS and some time bouncing around in the file and borrowing from some existing file that's already on the market.
To be really blunt, you can basically buy the starting point to this file off of the WinOS resellers database. Will get you a really close,
which I'm sure is where they got
set of knobs that is probably 90% there to what this is.
And Matt and Tony know wherever you got this file in the WinOS database or lifted off the internet or something. But just obviously spent a few months tweaking this and then developing a good army of trolls to defend it and back it up. Yeah. And now we're here. So that's why we're doing this deep dive, to make sure everyone knows the truth. So we've been talking about the torque reporting. We showed you the problems, at the code and calibration level. Now we want to discuss, what does it look like on the road? How does it actually impact the driving experience? Because I think there's a lot of people out there that will say, well, I know technically speaking, this doesn't look great. This doesn't look perfect. Maybe they didn't use the right recipe for cornbread, but it tastes good to me.
Or you just did it a different way, but they all work the same in the end.
Yeah. So we want to show you, some people eating the cornbread and what it looks like, and it's not as tasty as it looks or it should be. And so that was what we did last week by releasing the Competitor X video. We didn't want to just come out and blast Jackal, because the point wasn't necessarily to make them look bad. It was to show how good our file is. But as part of this presentation, it became pretty obvious that people need to know more. People need more answers. People need to understand this better. And just seeing a lot of the trolling, misinformation being put out there, we want to do a deep dive now, and not only show you the problems in the code, but also discuss and show you how it affects the driving experience as well. And again, this is something you would feel if you flash this file into your own B8. You would feel what you're seeing. And not only does it do it in our car, we went out on the internet and took the videos of the Jackal supporters' own videos doing it too.
Even Jackal's own YouTube from their own like
show.
video advertising their files this is present. So it's very, very known about at Jackal's level, as well as all of their customers are experiencing.
And then you have Jackal saying it doesn't do it. You have them saying it's okay, that it's AMAX, that it's clutch wobble, which is a thing. And then there's a number of excuses about not doing adaptations and double talk and lies around that too. So we want to go over that with you guys now.
30, 60, quarter mile, 30, 60, quarter mile, 30, 650, quarter mile.
All right, so first we show the Jackal tune. This is Competitor X. This is a Stage 2 Plus E40. You can see the tack wobbling, the RPMs wavering up to 500 RPM between shifts. That's clutch slip. That's not supposed to be doing that. And now we show the 034 file. Smooth, fast, crisp shifts. Look at how stable the tack is. There's no wavering or wandering. That means the ECU and the TCU are perfectly in sync together, as opposed to the Jackal pull, where you see that slipping and the TCU is always playing catch up to the ECU because Jackal's not being truthful. They're lying to the TCU, and the TCU has to catch up to what the ECU is doing, and that's why you see the slip. That's why you see the wobble. It catches up eventually, but it doesn't know how much torque the ECU is making, so it engages the clutches with not enough pressure, and they slip, and then it's like, oh no, clutches are slipping, let's clamp down.
Yep.
That's why you see all that wavering.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's a narrative out there that that's a good thing, that's good for your transmission. The factory doesn't slip like that, doesn't waver like that, but it's just false, blatant gaslighting to say that that's okay. And then now something new came out about how the way we solidly engage the clutches with no slip is somehow bad.
And it isn't engaged with no slip. There's still
always slip,
a
right?
programmed ramp rate between the clutches, between the gears, as there should be, that is controlled. And it ramps between the clutch to the next gear, to the next clutch pack, just like it's supposed to, and you don't have this bouncing because we have all of the torque and all of the pressure under control.
The difference is it's a precisely controlled and calibrated amount of slip versus the TCU catching up to the ECU, right? Big difference. Yeah. Okay, so here we're showing, this is more like, these aren't like quarter mile pulls. This is more like acceleration, driving around. First, we're showing the Jackal. You can see the continued clutch slipping behavior and issues. I mean, the tack should never jump like that, and the tack is even smoothed a little bit as well. It's
tack
actually much more.
Yeah, there's
than
a
that.
whole bunch of functions in the ECU to smooth and dampen the actual tack needle.
Yeah, if the tack was undampened, you'd probably be seeing 1,000 RPM swings, and just the fact that you can hear it so audibly.
And you can see this in all the data logs too, of course.
Yeah, now we'll play the 034 video, and you can see how smooth it is in wide open throttle and part throttle situations. No unrestrained clutch slip or clutch wobble, as the Jackal guys like to call it. There is a controlled amount of slip. The TCU and ECU are perfectly in sync. So after showing the video, Competitor X video last week, I think a lot of people's eyes were opened, and I think thousands of 034 customers were pleased to see that they had an excellent file that was better than the competition. But there was a strong response from Jackal and the Jackal supporters, and interestingly enough, I think Jackal customers knew immediately that it was a Jackal tune just because of that characteristic clutch wobble that they like to talk about so much. So Matt Barrington responded, if it was a Jackal car, somebody clearly didn't do an adaptation, and the pressure were probably bonkers from the 034 file. He also said, I have not had any customers reach out with an issue like that. Many times in the past, Matt himself said that you do not need to do adaptation. In our case, we did adaptations. It doesn't matter though. The problems that we're seeing with the Jackal tune is not the result of an adaptation. Do you want to talk real quick about that? Technically,
yeah, I mean the adaptions on these is generally just for the clutch contact points. They call them the kiss points. Some of the gear engagement actuators and some of the clutch pressure ramps and stuff. It is generally all around that real light load. You could say high slip. It's when it's trying to just start engaging that clutch and kind of creep away from either a stop or just smoothly transitioning from gear to gear. That's what generally the adaptions are there for.
Yeah, the adaptation does not allow the TCU and the ECU to be properly synced, and that's again the problem we're seeing here. TCU does not know what's going on inside the ECU, not to the degree that it can prepare for the shift to hold the clutch pressure at the right level to not slip. So it's shift, slip uncontrollably, and then catch it and correct using its closed loop or base programming functionality.
Yeah.
Matt also said, you don't need to do adaptations, send it every time, YOLO. So I guess maybe that's Jackal's new slogan, YOLO.
I'm not sure what they recommended me on.
And then, Matt also, at the end of the first quote, said that he has not had any customers reach out to him with an issue like that. But here we have a clip of, someone, Jackal customer, asking about it, and Matt simply stating that it's normal AMAX behavior. And this is a very common narrative from the Jackal supporters, that it's, a normal thing that AMAX cars do. Yet our Climax files run AMAX with no clutch wobble, no uncontrolled slip. So now that you've seen the video comparison of our tune to the Jackal tune in the Competitor X video, we've done some around town and non-wide open throttle type acceleration. We went out, like I mentioned, on the internet and pulled Jackal's own videos and the videos of some of their most fervent supporters, and we can see the exact same clutch slipping, shifting behavior in virtually every Jackal tune that's been posted. So it's not just a one-off thing. It's not the result of just the adaptation. There's people saying that, did something to the car to make it drive like that. That's just absurd. We didn't have to. We didn't have to do anything other than load the file just like any customer would. So here's that video showing not only the Jackal clips, but in some cases the people saying that it doesn't do that, and then showing that it's doing it on their very own car.
And keep in mind, some of these clips you're going to see are some of the most refined tunes they have that have gone back and forth a number of times to get it as good as they could get. Yeah.
These are customized, tailored files after either complaints or requests for further, fixing and correcting. Another response to the video was that it's clutch or DSG wobble, and so there's one of the Jackal supporters, I think he goes by F Dot on Facebook or somewhere, and so he comes out and says, you can hear and see it wobble, it's the clutch is slipping, and then he says again, oh gosh, yes, you heard my clutch slip. This is one of Jackal's own supporters who admits that the clutches slip uncontrollably, yet feels that it's okay for some reason, that it's not a problem. And then you have this clip from Cameron Purser basically gaslighting people and saying that Jackal files don't do that. Now he happens to run a ZF8, not a DSG, and so the shifting and TCU dynamic between a ZF8 and a DSG is different. We're only discussing the DSG issues, but again, you see Jackal supporters blatantly denying that anything is happening, while other Jackal supporters recognize it but say it's not actually a problem. And then one of the most fervent Jackal supporters is I guess he goes by David Joseph Panciotti. I hate to make these guys famous, but maybe they should be. And so his big thing, and I'm not sure how much stock he owns in Jackal, or but I think he spends like 8 to 10 hours a day online defending Jackal, or propagating or evangelizing for Jackal. And his narrative is that it's just AMAX or it's clutch wobble. This is not how AMAXs shift. If you want to know how a good AMAX shift is, look at the factory or look at our file, our Climax file. But someone says, why do your RPMs flare? Is your clutch slipping? And he says, no. So he blatantly denies that the clutches are slipping, even though that's actually what happens. And he may not actually know. I don't think he's the most technical guy. And then so the guy responds saying, interesting, why are they flaring though? And he says it's not belt slip, and then he goes on to say that it's just AMAX shifting, and they all sound like that. And he's right. All Jackal AMAXs do sound like that. Audi AMAX does not sound like that. 034 AMAX does not sound like that. I'm not sure about the other tuners on the market because we're just here talking about Jackal. And then another shot of David saying, yep, it's just normal clutch wobble. Happens to a lot of DSG cars using AMAX. actually happens to all of them, David. And him also saying that it's very normal for higher horsepower DSG cars, which is kind of true.
It is
right?
true.
Because
That's,
the ECU doesn't know.
That is the kind of the indicator here is
Right.
that the torque level that they can report is capped. So as you make more and more power, you're riding that cap still to the TCU. So you are always going to have more and more slip and more catch up the higher power you make. It's nothing to do with the TCU. The transmission can lock that down no problem, as you can see on our stuff, if done right. But when you are only able to send X amount of torque to the TCU, and you're sending that same amount of torque from stage 2 to 2+ to whatever custom 2+ thing you've got, that's when it starts being more normal for high horsepower DSG cars.
So from an engineering standpoint, if the problem gets worse at higher horsepower, then you just confirmed that the ECU programming is not right, is not taking into account the increase in torque.
Yep.
Finally, David, in that upper right-hand clip, changes his tune a little bit and says that it is, in fact, slip, but it's controlled slip. And it's not a defect of the clutches, which obviously it isn't. There's nothing wrong with the clutches.
It's nothing on the defect of the clutches. No, it's a defect of the numbers being sent to the transmission from the ECU and what the TCU is able to do with it.
But we just wanted to show one example of the double talk, not only from Jackal, but from their supporters. It's like they'll just say anything in the moment to make up whatever reason they need to make it sound like nothing's wrong. Okay, so there's actually quite a bit more in this presentation, but I think by now you probably want to go do something more fun. And hopefully you've learned something from this. What we've learned is, we're not perfect, we're not infallible. Again, we're not here to say that. But what we want to point out is the big apparent difference in the quality of our engineering and calibrations and what Jackal purports to say they have and do not. We strive to be transparent and honest about our files when we make mistakes, like when we did on the Climax release, and we had a handful of people who had some shifting problems with the Climax. We worked all weekend to correct it and had a functional update out
in 2 days.
In 2 days on the next Monday. We do make mistakes. If Jackal or anyone else would be so kind to point out any issues in our tunes or files, we'd love to fix them. We're here to continually improve. Again, we started out 9 years ago similar to where Jackal is now, and we've worked really hard to grow and improve the product. In a paradigm shift above orders of magnitude what we started with, and so I think the best way that Jackal can respond to this is to admit their fault and correct it. That's what would be best for their customers. That's what would be best for the market. It wouldn't be good for us if they actually were able to improve their product and make it better. But I think that would be the right thing to do. And that's what we strive to do, because we aren't perfect. But we do always want to take responsibility and accountability for the mistakes we make and correct and improve them. And I think that's why we are one of the leading tuning companies in Volkswagen and Audi, because we do tackle the hard problems. We do strive to be the best we can be, and we do operate in a world of truth with our customers, and we can't tell lies. I want to talk about that for a little bit. It's a losing strategy to lie, right? Like if you tell a lie, you have to keep telling more and more lies, and at some point the lies catch up to you. So I think my perspective on life, after being around for a decent chunk of time, is it's best to operate in the truth, even if it means coming out and telling the truth. It may be a little difficult, but it's so much better than having to continually tell more and more lies, which we saw after the Competitor X, right? After the Competitor X video released, a whole new wave of lies were propagated, and there'll be more after this, trust me. Yeah. And we can't wait to hear what they are. But lying is just a losing strategy. The more you lie, the deeper you get.
So in summation, we really want to get across what is really in the product you're buying. Is what you're being told the truth? And what we found here had a lot of misrepresentation, not minimal, not a little bit of glossing over, not some marketing pitch on something other. It was straight up, factually, very obviously incorrect. So that's a lot of what we're trying to correct, because we have to combat that. We have people telling you guys that, hey, we did it this way with all your safeties, everything's in place. They can't figure it out, but we did. That's not what you're buying. So we didn't have any better way to get that across without showing you really what's inside.
Yeah, and as a company that's doing it the right way, to have to compete with someone who's lying about their products and blatantly falsifying it, making it seem like it's better, we had to speak out. Another thing we want to touch on is the BA community used to be a place where you could come and enjoy your car, whether you're running APR or IE or Unitronic or whatever it was. There was a level of acceptance. Granted, there's always been competition between the tuning companies, but the community itself was a positive place where people could enjoy and appreciate their cars. We hear from so many people now that are unhappy being on the groups and the forums, that there's a lot of vitriol and trolling, that it's become a toxic environment. We even started our own B8 Facebook group just to try to address that and make a place where one of the rules is you can't be a douchebag. And so part of the problem with the community is this buying into lies and misinformation. The BA community used to be a place where people were technical, they could fact check, they could do this kind of validation themselves, but a lot of those really smart people who wanted to put a lot of time and energy into understanding the tuning and having a technically proficient understanding have left and moved on to other things just because it's become such a nasty place. So there's not much we can do about that other than starting our own group and trying to make a great place for people to be, but at least putting the facts out there, having real information that people can go by, calling out the lies and the misinformation. It's just something we have to do at this point. This community and industry is important to us, and we will continue to fight. We're not going anywhere. 034 is going to be here. We're coming up on 20 years next year, and we want to be here for another 20 plus. So we hope the message lands, and we hope this calls out some of the bad players. So thank you for listening. I know this wasn't quick. Again, this isn't something we wanted to do, but we felt like we needed to do. We're open to hearing feedback from it. We hope that many will find this informative. Everything we said is true. We'd love to hear any critiques. We have live chats every week, so be happy to continue to address any concerns or questions about this. I've even thought about doing an additional follow-up live chat just dedicated to responses to this. This isn't something that we want to shy away from or just throw out there and go stick our head in the sand. This is an ongoing, continued effort for us to lead in this community, to continue to innovate, to take care of customers better than anyone else. That's our goal, is to always be the best, to take a no BS approach, and so let us know what you think. Comment on videos, shoot us an email, Snapchat us, whatever. Thanks for listening, everyone. Appreciate it.
Take care.